everybody. Thank you so much for joining our second collaboration with our partner, Sustainable Brand. Today's event's theme is Redefining Good Life. And our speaker today is Kun Stephen Ko, who is the Business Operation Consultant at PTTGC, where he mentors the company and other companies as well. And a topic of his expertise would be leadership, sustainability, and CSR. He was the former Senior Vice President of BASF, the world's largest chemical company, and he also is pursuing a Doctor of Business Administration degree at Polytechnic University in Hong Kong. So please welcome Kun Stephen Ko.
Thank you very much for the introduction. It's wonderful to be here in Chulalongkorn University, because I explained that the first time I came to Thailand in 1991, I was visiting Chula as a salesman of a software for chemical engineering. And the software has a lot of environmental relationship because it optimizes energy use and material use for chemical engineering. So I've come full circle, and I'm very fortunate to be working for PTT Global Chemical as a consultant, but really I'm actually full-time there, but the title is consultant. Today, I want to talk about the topic of oceans and sustainability. I think we all have choices, many choices in life. Like this morning, I woke up and I could have worn a white shirt, and I could have worn black trousers, but I chose to wear this, or at least I was suggested to wear this. I decided to, rather than exhibit, because strangely enough, this reminds me of the ocean. But that's kind of strange, because ocean is usually blue. That's the promotional material for SQ and many other brands. But why this? And this is the beauty about sustainability. We human beings can imagine a future or existence or a present that is very different from every other person. This reminds me of the ocean because this is made of garbage, rubbish from the Mediterranean Sea. It is made by our partner called EcoElf that has for some years been upcycling the ocean marine waste to turn it into marine fashion, if you like. And the other reason that's very powerful, because human beings can imagine different things with different colors. And I don't know, I had a choice of getting a green one, but I chose this one because I wanted to stand out. I want the camera to like me, but also because it reminds me of the boys in the swimming platforms in Australia and other places, because it means to stay away, there are sharks, and so on. So for me, I chose this as part of a presentation to remind me and you that ocean can look very different. Ocean can be warm. It can keep me warm in the high air conditioning in the Siam Paragon Mall, but it can also make me very happy when I'm, say, in the northern part of Canada where I spend a lot of time. So human beings can define sustainability in the way they choose. And that is what I want to talk a bit about. Because I talked to Ajahn Nick earlier, and we're talking about how different Western countries define sustainability in very rational ways, but sometimes not holistic ways. And I would say not as successfully maybe as Sasen or the country of Thailand, where King Rama IX has explained the sufficient economy. So outside of view, I may be wrong, but that's my view. And based on, at least as a aspiring academic, based on the data I have, all the case studies I have on the East Coast of the United States, West Coast of the United States, the Great Lakes area of Canada, France and Germany, Singapore, Hong Kong, and now Thailand, I think Thailand and a place like Sasen has great chance to really be a leader in defining sustainability for business. Okay, so that's the introduction. Now I explain what my company has been doing. Marine rubbish is a problem. And according to this international study, it's a big problem for Asia. There's a leakage Leakage means things that should belong in landfill or belong in incinerator does not go there. It goes to a place that's undesirable. It ends up in the ocean. And Asia, sometimes unfortunately, we're blamed for all kinds of things. Tom Yum Goong, or kimchi crisis in 1997, if you're as Asian as me. But in a way, they think they have the data to show Thailand to be the number 5 polluter of marine rubbish, marine garbage in the world. That's not a nice title. And I think we need to do something about it. And the numbers are staggering. 150 million tons of plastics in the sea. Plastics, particular, means different types of plastics, not one plastic. That we will come back to because the types is very important. Yeah. The second point, there's accumulation. As a chemical engineer, we always look about the steady state, but the accumulation, that's not good. Right? It's getting worse. A sad picture, it's affecting the planet. The first P in sustainability is the planet. And this is a very graphic photo. Some people think it's not pleasant, but I think we have to face reality. The first thing about succeeding in sustainability and management, either sustainable management, is to look yourself in the mirror and say the truth. This is the truth. It's a bit hard. And I think we have to remind ourselves it can be a real bad thing. And this is an Australian example before I knew Daniel was coming. Okay. As business people, and I would really contend that the most important people in the sustainability equation is the business people. Why I say that? Because nobody should know economics as well as the business people. To be specialist in environmental science, or at one time I wanted to study environmental science in 1986, I could have become an excellent environmental scientist. But if I had not understood business, unfortunately, and very unfortunately, my voice would be very low. I don't think, even though I think I am hardworking, you would invite me if I'm a pure environmental scientist to give this speech. Yeah, you give me a different speech, but not to an audience where the people who care about the planet, the profit, and the people meet. And I would say that business people are the best placed people to have and lead this discussion. So this example is a business example. It's not exactly marine garbage, but it's related. It's about fishing in the sea, where Thailand was cited for violations by this International Institute on Fishing and given a yellow card. And it will affect many things. It will affect definitely the business of fishing, maybe the very leading, fish companies in Thailand, but it will also affect the livelihood of probably thousands and tens of thousands of fishermen. And it's really a reminder, the yellow card, for us to look in the mirror when something like that happens, that we need to do something. So this is an example where the government's been aware of it, and there is something happening because there is a deadline. But that may be not enough in environmental sciences. You cannot always wait. You cannot always wait for things to happen. And unfortunately for the industry I work in, plastics is a very long-term business. Plastics has been invented maybe 100 plus years or so, but it's staying in the ground and it's staying in the ocean for hundreds of years. People sometimes say there's more plastic in the sea than fishes. That's very sad, right? It's a very long-term business. And in long-term business, you also have production plants that don't just switch overnight. You need to plan ahead. So now I'm talking to a SASM group, it's a business school. So you know when we talk about strategy, it's not just for today and tomorrow. It's for things that will endure, business that can succeed for years and years and decades to come. And I think Thailand also has an example of very successful long-term businesses. And certainly the most admirable businesses in the world are tens, hundreds of years. I think in Japan there was, I remember a ryokan that's like 700 years old, I read somewhere. That's remarkable. Yeah? That's really remarkable, how a company can continue to survive and serve and excel is really the core of, I think, what business schools need to do. And that's the discussion I want to have with Ajahn. All right. So this is the dilemma of the plastics company. You have to address it before it comes, because your products are very pervasive for decades and centuries, and the plants last for 20, 25, 50, 75 years. If you don't make a decision, strategic decision now or yesterday, you could be in trouble for many, many years to come. And even the biggest chemical companies could have died during the financial crisis in 2007. Some companies that have 100-year history. My old company, 150-year history. It almost went bankrupt. So chemical producers like PTTGC and our peer companies, we have to anticipate. We cannot wait for someone to give us a yellow card. And so I feel very fortunate because I'm working in Thailand, because it's an easy story to explain. The fish, it explained why we need to act, and without praising him more than necessary, the CEO is a very visionary person, because I can't take any credit for what I showed today. It happened before I came. The CEO had a vision that we need to do something about marine rubbish, marine garbage, before it happens. The only part that I'm fortunately enough to be working on is the last 3 months, how to turn it from writing a CSR check into real business. Maybe like Jazzberry or something. This is the vision we have. And to do that, really, GC cannot do it alone. That's why someone asked, why are you going to this talk? It's not our business. I said, well, it is our business. Because if we don't have people who understand what we're doing, if they're not disposed to help us, if they think we're just greenwashing, then it's terrible. It will be terrible, a disaster, because GC cannot do it alone, even though we're one of the largest companies in Thailand. So that's the message I want to leave with everybody. The ocean's a mess, right? We have some initiatives, we try to find the balance, and we need help. So, repeat, 32% of the total packaging, one category of plastics, not to mention the furniture or other stuff, is leaking into the sea, 32%. It only makes sense. Then we should enhance recyclability. I'm preaching to the converted, the professionals. I won't talk about that, but you know what that means. And in chemical engineering, even if you cannot recycle it, at least you should burn it for its fuel value. I don't want to talk too much about CO2 equivalent, but at least that's the concept. At least you should make it disappear and not be a problem to the fish and the turtles. That's really chemical engineering thinking. So this is fairly well established. This has come to our notice, partly because of the yellow card, but also because of certain NGOs making films about plastics in the sea and about the detriment, the harm done to animals. This is the problem. But if you have been to any dump, or seen pictures of dump, or seen this collection scheme, you know there are a lot of generally uneducated people or families making a living from it. So let's imagine if we have no dump. That's actually not a perfect situation, because you have a lot of unemployed people. And unemployed people, uneducated, either starving, or in some parts of the world making trouble. Because if you're young, you have nothing to do, you cannot eat, what do? You make trouble. You either become a criminal, or you make other trouble, like the Middle East sort of circumstances. So in that case, we're thinking, GC as a whole, we do some work on this area, we enhance it, of course, we talk about the Dow Jones Sustainability Index as a gold standard in most places, with the Stock Exchange of Thailand to shoot for. That's a holistic approach to sustainability, but also with individual emerging labels and also certification bodies. This one is called Cradle to Cradle, and I like that I particularly chose. I'm sure there are many other ones in Germany and Japan and so on. I chose that because Cradle to Cradle can have a double meaning. Cradle to Cradle can be the product life cycle of the product, my marine garbage and my clothes. But I think Cradle is a reminder, it's future generations. is for the young ones. My niece, my nephew, your children, and your nieces and nephews and grandchildren. So this is a reminder that these two are, we have to aim for the best standard, but we have to aim for it on the corporate SET level, the stock exchange level, but also on the product micro level. And it has to deal with real life topics, babies, yeah, survival, and so on. So, coming back to this picture, there's a waste stock. You know, business students learn their stock in English. In American, I guess you call it inventory, right? So inventory in the sea with lots of plastic. What would happen if that became an asset and not a liability? What happens if that 150 million tons was an asset and not a liability? Wouldn't that be wonderful? And so somebody, Dr. Sirku and Kun-Pong, the CEO of the company, decided, let's clean up the waste stock with the hope that we can make it an inventory, make it an asset, rather than a pest, a menace, a problem. So that was the whole motivation behind this project. And then through that exercise, they ran into a company called EcoHealth that makes this particular product in Spain. And what's really lucky about it is that the problem has no borders because the ocean has no borders. And maybe somebody, if we know the right person in Spain, we can get much quicker to the solution. We can learn from the experiences because this has been manufactured for a few years already. And we can replicate it to Côte Samet, maybe to Phuket, maybe Samui, and other places. So this is the logic behind it. And not be number 5 anymore. But instead, what would happen, I don't think Thailand is number 5 plastic producer in the world, but the number 5 polluter, unfortunately today. But what would happen, it would become the number 5 producer of plastic, sustainable plastic, or even number 4, number 3, number 2, number 1. As a businessman, that's what we want. Thailand has been not only the best rice exporter, not only the best tourist destination, and if you believe all the American business school stuff, competitive advantage, we have a place. We have an ocean. Normally it looks dirty, but what happens, it becomes an inventory, an asset for us to succeed. So this is how it happens, and it's for the planet's sake. And the planet also means, of course, the people and the companies on the planet. And so PTT is working with the community of Rayon. And this is a bit of a sort of a push from the CEO for many reasons, because Rayon is the home city of our big chemical plants. Chemical plants, maybe something you should remember about chemical engineers. Chemical engineers can be the worst environmental problem, but if you remember, actually good chemical engineering, if they're good, is to minimize energy use and material use. So the poor ones pollute, the good ones minimize. And I think we all want to be on the good side of that. And Rayon, the hub of this plant, which could be the worst polluter, or could be the best environmental friend, is the strategic choice our company has taken. We've chosen that we want chemical engineering to be a force for good. And we want Rayon, our home city, to be the start, because it could be the worst place of pollution, or it could be the beach of Koh Samet, could be the first place we're actually harvesting, mining for resources. In this case, not natural, it's plastics, but resources from the sea to build our journey towards sustainability. So that's a community project, home city, very comfortable, and it's a pilot in the concept of circular economy, because no company, I think, can claim to know something about circular economy. The circular economy is owned by the ecosystem, it's owned by the country, it's owned by the government, it's owned by the NGO, it's owned by everybody. So if you are a software person, it's kind of like the cloud. I would say the cloud owns the circular economy. GC doesn't, but we can be a pilot. Yeah? In the cloud, we can fly around, we can try to do something. We can make some noise. Yeah? And we were very fortunate that we were partnered with the leading, one of the most successful authorities in the world, remote tourism. Otherwise, Thailand would not be here, right? Very successful in tourism. So we work with the Thai Authority of Tourism on this topic of sustainability in the ocean. And lastly, this is the common Eco Elf. And that's the video we looked at a little bit earlier, where they're promoting this idea that what I wear is a reminder that we can do something good from marine garbage. This was on September 1st, and Kuntun and Kun Vladimir, we were there. We were watching this great show of 100 divers going into the sea, kicking off the Upcycling the Oceans Thailand project with us executive. So you can go to Facebook and you can find it. But this is some pictures for your reminder with people really contributing and then making a difference. I think what I was really struck as a participant was the energy level of the volunteers and bloggers. Thailand has a very, very lively social media scene. These people are currently, some of them has 1 million followers. For me, it's unthinkable because when I was going through school, it was just mainframe computer. So I cannot imagine 1 million people with a computer in their hand following what we're doing, for example. This is totally unthinkable. But that's also the promise and the power of cradle-to-cradle ideas. Because the young are our future. One day, they will be sitting here with you and me. They will be having this lunch, maybe in a much bigger setting, talking about the topic that we're talking about, which is upcycling the oceans. So, petrochemicals, PET bottles, consumer, maybe 1 hour in my hand, make a big mess, but we can collect from the ocean and reduce the impact. And we can recycle it into something that lasts a few years. Because I think the company is also, these are high quality clothes. You know, Hong Kong, I have a lot of friends who work in clothing, so yesterday I checked, very high quality clothes. Okay, so that's something that will last a few years, not just be thrown away and make more mess. It's still not closing the circle, but it's going a long way towards making it sustainable. All right, I'll let you read, but basically, you know, we're in a terrible business. At one time, oil price was 140. Our refining company made a lot of money, and then now it's, you know, $50 or something, and it could go to 40 maybe. And at one time, plastics was very good business, but today is not, because Middle East, they can get oil much cheaper than they can get water. They pump it up and make it out, they send it to Thailand and to the markets we sell. So it's a real red ocean business as a business student. It's a terrible business, really. Yeah. If Kun Pong doesn't have the vision to do this, I would say I can't help you, because it's a downhill business. All right. So everybody can win. Those poor ladies and men in Rayon who are collecting for their livelihood, feeding their family, but they have no education, they can get something. We hope PAT can have a good image and explain what we're doing. On top of just, you know, irresponsible tourism, we have very responsible tourism. And most of all, we can reduce the dump, reduce the leakage to the ocean, and add value to the partners in the ecosystem, the recycler and the fiber manufacturing of Thailand. Okay. So, we will reduce natural resource consumption. So, Thailand can be a leading producer, even though we don't have a lot of oil and gas, and we'll close the loop. So, to summarize, we want to turn waste into an asset. It's a pilot. Maybe we don't have enough product, maybe we don't have enough asset, don't have enough raw material, but we're going to make a start. Maybe it's not the perfect material. This is made of PET bottle or fish net. All right? But actually, PTTGC's business is not PET bottle and fish net. We make the cap. So our challenge is to do something with the cap and do all the other things we make, which is, you know, refrigerator part and so on. But we need to make a start. So this is the CSR check writing part. We're doing it even not because we'll make any money from this, but we're learning in the hope that we can flip it into our mainstream business. But as you know, as environmental scientists, you know, if we don't make an example, nothing will happen. Because people will say greenwash, blah, blah, blah. You know, you're trying to buy your way to the good books. So we're trying to make a start with PET, and if we succeed, we can do it with more plastics. And we hope all plastic. and it will lock the value into the product value chain because it will be cradle to cradle. And we can turn the invaluable into the valuable. And waste will become an asset, and waste disappears. Now, before I let you read that, I want to get something for you. I don't know if you noticed this. Some of you, maybe Hiro-san, are my age. When you go to a coffee shop in the old time, I don't know, maybe in Japan it was white color. But I think now people in the room, if you go to Starbucks, Amazon, or Pacific Coffee, you don't say anything, it is brown. We remember the time when it was white color. It was 100% virgin. This, made from 100% recycled fibers. The bleach was used to make the napkins. Yeah? No bleach was used to make the napkins. Save the world. So I'm very fortunate to be speaking to you because I think with your help at Facebook and by email to me, we will realize the same outcome as with paper. 100% recycled plastic. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. This topic is really close to my heart, so I'd like to take the first question, actually the first two questions. As you said that the shirt that you're wearing is made from recycling plastic from the Mediterranean Sea. And my question to you is, plastic is known to leak chemical into the sea as well as absorbing the chemicals from the sea. And as the Mediterranean being pretty much a closed sea, it's pretty high toxic. And also your pilot project being in Rayong, that is close to Mataput, which is also a highly toxic sea as well. What measure do you have to make sure that the consumer is safe from these toxins from the sea, from them wearing it? And the second question is, being from a chemical company, if I understand correctly, plastic is petroleum based, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I think plastic is produced from a byproduct from producing fuel, correct? If we use all of this plastic, recycled plastic, then what can we do with this byproduct from producing fuel if we're still using fuel?
Sorry, the bio, what is it?
So is plastic produced from a byproduct of fuel production? Yeah, so if we are, if all of us using recycling plastic, which I hope we would be, what will we do with this byproduct that used to be producing virgin plastics?
Okay. So thank you for the question. On the topic of toxins, I would say we're on a very early stage. I would say this project is probably one of the earliest in the whole world. We try to do something with marine plastic, which actually is probably the toughest challenge. And a lot of the things, we could have taken something easier. The easier one is what a lot of soft drink companies are doing. They're focusing on the PET bottles, the drinking water bottle, because that's quite pure and the additives and so-called the potential toxins are very well known. And I think that is probably a foregone conclusion. If the companies like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Colgate put the power behind it, that will work, right? Because that's a low-risk topic. GC has chosen probably the toughest one. We don't have all the answers. So it's an emerging topic. We have to talk to you, your friends, figure out how to do it. But we also inspected the PET chain. We could do it like now. But I think as an aspirational thing, something that's really meaningful to drive the country and to drive our scientists. GC has a lot of good scientists, not a lot, but it's 60 to 160 people are very good compared to the 10,000 at BSF. But what we have to do is aspire to something really strong, and I know they can do it. So to answer your first question, toxins we don't know everything about. We could have taken the easier route, we chose not to. We'll do our best, and it's accepted in Spain already. And the European Union is a highly regulated environment, so we have to compare the standards and how we can meet the global standard. And in fact, I was talking to our people, we want our product to sort of be approved by the European Union. So people cannot say, oh, you just take an easy route out, because we want to go to the highest standard. And that's the one side. The second topic, the bio topic, we can have a separate discussion. I'll tell you my view on it. Whether something is made of petrochemical or bio raw material, like sugarcane or, I don't know, palm oil, is a constant debate in human existence. And I may not even have the same opinion as the CEO. This will always happen. But there's something good about bio, because bio has some properties that other products in petrochemical chain cannot replace. For example, if I understand, I'm not a chemist, but I understand a lot of skin creams for ladies. The fact it's smooth and moisturizing and blocking the moisture, a lot of it comes because of the bio ingredient. So there's still a lot of good uses for biochemicals. And if nothing else, you can eat it because you can change it to food which can feed the people who are starving. So I actually don't have any. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, but apologies if I wasn't clear. The question was basically, I hope we'll all be using recycling plastic, but in the process of producing fuel, which we are all still using it, we still have this byproduct, which is now would not be producing plastic. What would happen to this materials that we used to use producing plastic? Do we have to dump it, or there are other things we could do with this material?
My data is probably a few years old, but if I remember correctly the statistics, fuel actually consumes 93% of petrochemical products, like petroleum and gas. 93%. Plastics is only 7%. So the big issue is, the issue for the NGOs is really energy rather than plastic. If you don't use plastic, you can find a way to use it for fuel. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody has more questions? Okay.
I read recently that, like in Thailand, there's a big problem around like takeaway food packaging, the foam packaging and things like this. I don't know if you have any insider information about that and how maybe some other countries are dealing with it.
I don't have much on the solution side, but the topic, the challenge side is really real, because a lot of the food packaging is the hardest one to recycle and to collect. So a lot of what happens in the ocean is not the PET bottle, because PET is highly identified, it's relatively homogeneous, so you can recycle it, and there's a very well-established value chain in Thailand for that. So the packaging, I agree with you, it's a big topic, it's a tough topic. Packaging is a huge business for ourselves and our competitors. And this is why we're trying to use this pilot to figure out how to do the bigger problem of recycling packaging. Just to give you an idea, when I joined the project, I pushed the team to research whether, at least for the clothes that they make out of recycled, fishnet or PET bottle, we can do something with the packaging. And what I was a bit encouraged by was that you can actually get packaging that is recycled 10, 20, 30%, even 100%. Of course, it doesn't look good. It's my story about the paper. When I was growing up, it was always white napkin, but now people don't think anything of it's brown. So if it's safe, napkin, you put it on your face, but it's recycled paper. Imagine if we can get to the same level with plastics. I think Kunwook and I will be very happy, because then it's not an issue anymore, it's not toxic. Because I think when brown came up, people said, oh, that was paper before, that was cardboard before. Why using it for Starbucks napkin? But I think we need to get there, and I think we made a first step. So what you need to know, the first step we've done is try to get cloth packaging, which is not related to sensitive personal nutritional topics. Yeah. But if we do something successful with the cloth packaging, then we have a hope to plastic to the next level, more demanding. Yeah, maybe first it's going to be something like, let's say, detergent powder packaging or something, which is not so big issue, and then eventually move to food and eventually to personal care. But incidentally, very interestingly, there are companies in the world that are really making aggressive products, even personal care things, they make of recycled marine plastic. So we can get there, I'm sure.
Any more questions?
When you said turning the waste into the assets, so with the ocean garbage, does the company actually go into the sea and then dig into the garbage, the plastic garbage that in the sea, right?
Yes.
Is that the procedure that you're planning to do it?
Yes.
But start with Rayon first and then go to other provinces
Yes.
in Thailand, right?
Yes. So there's a video, I can email you the link. Basically, this exercise on September 1st was 100 divers. Yeah, 100 divers going to the sea and picking it up. Okay. And that's probably the highest effort. But I also have the hope. If we can show you can do the hardest thing, some of the easy one, we had to talk about this, whether it's land-based or marine-based, or it's the beach-based. And then there's some shoe company that we find 2 miles from the sea or something. But it's to show that the hardest thing can be done, then there's no reason why we should not be more responsible on the beach or far away from the beach. So yes, absolutely, it was an example done with actually marine divers with tanks going down to picking it up, cutting up, all the connection of the fish nets and so on. Yeah.
Just 2 parts. One part was, I read an article recently that flip-flops are a major component, a major problem in the oceans. The other question I was going to ask is about river systems. Are there major initiatives in the river systems, especially here in Thailand, to clean them up before it gets to the ocean?
Yeah, I think like this, and you probably get the hint of what I talked about. GC has chosen the hardest thing to do in the world. All right? We're hoping this will be an awakening. This is the yellow card before the yellow card. So that we get partners like yourself to start thinking about it and to have the dialogue we have just now. Should we do something about flip-flop? Should we do something about the rivers? Should we do some of the river, particularly around Loy Krathong time? These are the topics we want to raise. So with a very, let's say, visible pilot, we hope to have all those discussions. And definitely, it raises more questions than answers because flip-flop is not an easy recycled material. And there are many reasons why it ends up in the ocean. But at least we're talking about it. And of course, when they dive out, they don't ignore the flip-flop, they'll pick it up as well. Yeah. So, and we will never know when it's in rayon, when it comes from the river nearby or not. But we've chosen the toughest one to make it a showcase. And we hope to build an ecosystem with partners like SASA and so on to really address it on a social enterprise or corporate responsibility topic. So we address the flip-flops and the Loy Krathong and the river and the 2 mile and all of these things. Yeah.
I have the next question. So the method that you're using to collecting plastic is really labor intensive, therefore high cost right now, and it's not really scalable because if you need to get more marine debris, you need definitely more people to go down and get it. Is there a plan to look into machineries or ships or something to have a more effective way of removing marine debris from the ocean to use for your project?
Yeah. For better or worse, the Spanish topic, they are using fishing. So people who capture fish, and unfortunate for them, when they get a net, it's garbage as well as fish. So that's another route. Okay. We haven't got, and this is the pro and con of a startup inside a big corporation. We get this question all the time from our executives, and I have to tell them the same answer I'm telling you. We'll work it out, right? Because if we don't make the first step, yeah. But I have some rough ideas on my view, because first you don't want it to go into the ocean. right? And we know the PET bottles is very well established. And this colleague here mentioned food wrapping. So it may become more and more land-based. Even today, it's called upcycling the ocean. And I talked to Dr. Silicon, and we were talking about whether we should brand it differently than upcycling the ocean. For me, it's not important what brand is that we're doing really consistent scientific as well as social work to advance the cause of preventing things from going to the ocean. Maybe we would say, it's a logical project or something else. This is my vision.
Well, perhaps I could add something before we wrap up today. I think all of us here today as a consumer has a choice to consume less plastic and to dispose less plastic, and what kind of plastic you choose to use will have an impact as well. For instance, if you're using polystyrene, which is producing foam food boxes, and the plastic utensils that we all use, it's really hard to recycle and it's really costly, so it doesn't really get recycled. So I think we all have to do a little research, and then we have to have a change of heart to kind of help PTT and everybody else around the world to solve this problem. Thank you very much, Ms. Stephen.
Thank you.